Welcome, everyone. This is a webinar in a series of webinars that we're doing on particular pieces of functionality within ClubExpress. We do a couple of different types of webinars. Some are just overviews for those people that are new to ClubExpress. Some of them, they're not about ClubExpress functions, but they're about ClubExpress functionality, meaning how would an organization use ClubExpress to facilitate, say, an event? Like how would a bicycle club use ClubExpress to make a custom web page for an event, or put up a survey, or instead of volunteering for the event, or let people register for an event? How does an organization use the whole host of features within ClubExpress to do what's good for the club or for the organization? So in this one, we're drilling down onto a particular piece of functionality, and in this case, maybe one that not a whole lot of people are very experienced with. So we're going to be talking about the Ad Hoc Forms module today. We'll do a little introduction, and then we'll do a demonstration. But the first thing is we need to get a little housekeeping out of the way. Now, at the moment, all the phones are muted. So when you have questions, enter them into the chat window. At the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a button for chat. We have Victor, who is on one of our developers and on our support staff, that will be monitoring the chat and trying to answer questions as they come up. And also, we will revisit the questions at the end of the session so that the people that are watching the recording will be able to have the benefit of those questions. We'll revisit those questions. Now, ask questions along the way. You don't have to wait till the end. So if I'm showing something or demonstrating something, feel free to ask questions. And if you want, you can unmute your phone and ask the question. Feel free to jump in if you think that it won't interrupt the flow too much. Now, like always, there will be a recording available. And let me just show you where that is. If we go to clubexpress.com, go to the resources page, there's a section for blogs and video tutorials and webinars. If you go to the webinars page and go down to the bottom and you choose recent webinars, you'll see all of the recent webinars. As I said, some on particular functions like news and articles. Another one here was this overview for bicycle clubs and organizations. Also, we've been pretty busy making new video tutorials. And these are, again, function-based. So in the last week or so, we've published actually 4 that are sort of related about renewal and expiration settings, the renewal and sign-up wizard, member joining agreements, and additional charges. They're linked in the help system, and I also made a blog post that shows these 4 videos. So by all means, take a look at them because these may be things that you're not all that familiar with or you could use a refresher on. The other thing is that if you are using ClubExpress, and particularly if you like it, we would very much like for you to go to clubexpress.com/reviews and give us a review and let people know what you like about ClubExpress, so other people who are trying to decide what type of platform to base it on, let them benefit from your experience. And now, let's talk about Ad Hoc Forms. Ad Hoc Forms are, in a way, similar to surveys in that they allow you to solicit information from members and from non-members. The Ad Hoc Forms module lets you create custom web pages, in effect, that let you collect this information. And where might you use something like this? Well, you might be asking for submissions for speakers for an annual conference where you want the speaker to submit their topics and maybe a headshot, a photograph, and maybe a resume, things like that. Or you may want to nominate members for a club award, or maybe you're looking to fill a position and you want to collect applicants for a part-time job, or even just collect ideas from members for future programs. It's a way of just asking them questions. It's a little different than surveys, though. The surveys, and by the way, we've got video tutorials on surveys and on ad hoc forms and on answer types, and they're all kind of related. So you can go to the recent videos, or you can go to the support tab in your control panel. On the support tab, there's a section for video tutorials. But one of the main differences between a survey and an ad hoc form is that Surveys are typically multiple pages, whereas an ad hoc form is a single page. A survey can have a preamble and what they call a postamble, a lead-in page and a follow-up page, whereas an ad hoc form can have a preamble that's part of that single page, no postamble. An ad hoc form can optionally or require that the person filling out the form provide some file uploads, attachments as they were. So if you were doing a submission for a conference, you might say that you have to submit your resume or you have to submit a headshot. And ad hoc forms can have a fee. So you can decide whether a fee needs to be paid, how much, and if this fee is to be paid if you're a member or if you're a non-member or both. So you have control over this. And unlike the surveys, there is no general user interface for ad hoc forms. There's no list of ad hoc forms that a person can fill out. There is no ad hoc form that you can just surface to the user. It's all done via the administration. So we're hopefully going to cover a lot of ground today because I'm going to look at ad hoc forms from two different points of view. One is from the user point of view. And we're going to try to see what happens when a non-member tries to get to the form, a returning non-member, someone that's already maybe attended an event, or a member tries to get to a form. The interface that's presented to them is going to be a little different depending on what they're doing. We'll look at the preamble. We'll look at the questions on the form. In this particular case, we're using a photo contest submission. And we're going to require that at least one file be uploaded. And we're going to require that if you're a non-member, that a submission fee be entered. We'll also take a look at the email that's sent when somebody makes a submission, and we'll go on to how it's paid. And so that's looking at it from someone actually filling out the form, entering the information. Then we're going to look at it from the administrative perspective. Well, we'll look at that form since you'll already have seen the form. We'll look at how it's been configured. We'll show how to place a link to that form on a custom web page and how to add that custom web page to a menu because you don't typically add the form directly to the menu. You usually have a web page that will link to the form. And we're going to look at general ad hoc form configuration options. And these form configuration options could be things like categories and such. We'll show you how to define questions, go over some of the various answer types, cover some of the form status modes, and we're going to view some submissions for forms and how you review comments and how you can export, what the various statuses mean. And we're going to try to copy a form and do some reports. So as you can see, there's a lot here. I think the tutorial video that I did a couple of months back is about 22 minutes. So we've got 45 minutes left to do this, and that will include our questions and such. So,
quick question.
Yes?
Status modes. Is there a particular reason that you don't allow us to simply delete a form after we're done, after the event is over?
If the form has responses in it, I don't think you can delete it.
You can't.
Yeah, you can't because these things may have financial transactions attached to them. There may be a whole lot of reasons, but that's the reason why you can simply set the archived flag so it won't appear in your list.
Okay.
But that's the reason. There may be a whole lot of related information like payments and things like that. So if something has responses in it, that's likely the reason why the developers have turned off the ability to delete them. And we'll go through some of these things as we go along. But it's a very good question. So let's jump into it. Okay, everybody should be able to see my screen now, and I'll zoom the screen in a little bit, but you'll see that I have added a fly-in photo contest link to the non-member view, the public side of the website. You can see that we're not logged in because it says member login. And let's see if I just move in a little bit. If I click on fly-in photo contest, what it's doing is it's not taking me to the ad hoc form. It's taking me to a custom page that I produced that says, do you have photos of a summer fly-in? And I just modified it slightly because the previous version had a submission date by March 31st, so I just changed it to July 31st. And it's saying that the photos must be from a summer fly-in event. They must be taken by the submitter or family member, and that the entry fee is $5 for non-member and it's free for members. And it's telling them here that the winners, there'll be 3 winners picked from each category. So it shows that there are categories for this particular form. And the categories is just a checkbox that's filled out on the form. It's different than ad hoc form categories, and what they will receive and stuff like that. And when they click on Summer Fly-In Photo Contest Submission Form, this is linking to the ad hoc form. So if I click on it, it knows that we're not logged in, right? Because it shows up here that the member login is still here. So it says, if you're a member, click here to log in. Let's assume that we're not a member. And I can start typing in the information as a non-member, and it will be added to the non-member database. But in this particular case, we're going to say, I'm a non-member, but I have previously entered information on the website. So if I click over here and I go J. Dechtol, and the name is John, and I search, what it's done is it has added all this information that I had previously added because I attended an event or I made a purchase of a mug or something like that. So we're going to enter this form as a non-member. If we were a member, it would just simply take us directly to the form. The screen wouldn't show up. So we're going to go and do this as a non-member, a returning non-member. If it was somebody else, if it was Mary Dechtol or somebody else, and we didn't have that information, it would simply add this person to the non-member database. So if I say save here, now it's brought us to the actual ad hoc form. This section at the top is called the Preamble section. In a survey, Preamble is a separate page. Here, this is a heading. So we have a title here, we have the preamble here, and then we have half dozen fields, half dozen questions that are being asked. And these questions have different answer types. This first question here, let's say this the photographer's name is Lisa Dechtol. When defining this question, we've also added a note under the question that says list the names of the people who made photographs. So as part of many of these answer types, you have the ability to make some notes that appear underneath the field. Category is a drop-down list. So we're going to say that this is going to be in the youth category. And the phone number, we're just going to make 555-1212. And says, well, how many of these club and events have you attended? I'll say 2 to 4. Anything with a red dot next to it means that it is required. And there's one more field here that is a checkbox list. So this could be a list of any number of checkboxes, but in this particular case, I've limited it to only one checkbox, and I've made a minimum of one item needs to be selected. So in effect, making it required. So unless we check this, we won't be able to submit it. So I'm going to check this. And now we need to put in up to 3 photos. And you'll notice that photo number 1, it says here that it's required. So if I click on upload and I choose file, we're going to make this small balloon photo here. And I save that. So now it says that it has been uploaded. And now as the user, I can delete the photo and say, oh, no, I want to do a different photo. And they can also upload more photos, but up to 3 photos, but 1 in this photo 1 slot is required. So you could have something like a headshot and a resume and such, and you could name them headshot and resume and samples or whatever. But right now we're just naming them photo 1, 2, and 3. When I submit it, it says the response will be submitted once you've paid for it. As soon as they make a submission, an email is sent out. So here's an example of an email that I did while making the video. So it says, okay, your response to the fly-in photo contest has been received. This one was done a couple of months ago. And it says your payment of $5 is due before your responses changes to submitted, because right now it's pending. And then you'll see that it has the name, the category, the phone number, things like that, and the photo that was uploaded. So that's what gets sent out immediately upon submission. But this one hasn't been paid yet. And what would happen is this John Deckdahl, because he's not a member, could either pay by credit card, PayPal, or send in a check. And if they choose to send in a check, we can print an invoice or print a page or whatever. But for the moment, we're going to say done. If I log in as a member and I click on Fly-In Photo Contest, do the same thing, when I click on this, it brings me directly to the submission form, you see. So they don't have to go through that sort of registration process. What I'm going to do is log in as a different user. Now, for those people that haven't noticed, this came in a month or so ago, that you don't have to log out and log in as a different user. You can just log in as a different user now, which is very nice. And I'm just going to log in as Martin Smith. And Martin Smith is an administrator. If I go to the Fly-In Photo Contest, remember, this is showing a custom page. And if I were to edit the custom page, I could do that by just pulling out the Page Tools wizard here, and I could go in and edit the custom page and go edit the text and all of that. Now, one of the questions that will come up is, well, how do you link to an ad hoc form that's been created? And the way this is done is by going to your custom page, because you don't know what the URL is, the web address is of that form. And what you would do is you would go to that custom page and click on the link builder here. So you say insert link. You go to the link type. You say, I want to go to an ad hoc form, and it will present a list of all of the active ad hoc forms. So if I say Fly-In Photo Contest, and then I could make it as a text or a button or an image, I'm just going to leave it as text for the moment. If I click on this, now we have a link to that form. So this is the way to get the link to a form. There is nothing in the ad hoc form administration section that gives you a link to the form. This is the way to get it. And typically, and I mean, you could actually go look at the HTML for this now and pick up the URL for the form, but this is the way you would place the link onto a form. Or if you really needed to put the form directly onto the menu, create a page, pick up the URL of the form here, and then in your menus, place it as an external link. So if I go into the control panel and look at the website tab and go down to menus, I'm showing that on the public menu, we have this Fly-In Photo Contest. I'm going to take it out for the moment. And if I save it, you'll see that I'm logged in at the moment. So let me take it out of the member menu also. So if I take it out of the Fly-In Photo Contest here and save it, you see that it disappears from the menu here. But if I want to put it back in, for the public menu, I'll click here and say, I want to filter the available menu items by simply custom pages. Now, it shortens the list considerably. I can say I want the Fly-In Photo Contest, and I want it to be the second item in the list. And I'll do the same thing for the members. If I put it over here, it's going to be on the main area of the member menu, as opposed to putting it on the drop-down list for members. That would be putting it on the member submenu. So I'm just going to stick it at the top of the screen here. Go to Custom Pages, go Fly-In Photo Contest. This filter here only shows active custom pages. It's just like other things, the pages can be active or not. So now we've got them back again. But let's go take a look at the actual ad hoc form. And one way to do it is to actually start entering the form and then clicking on Edit that would appear here. But let's just go directly to the ad hoc forms. And ad hoc forms appears on the communications tab. And there is no real user interface for this. This ad hoc forms manager is not something that the user would ever see. This ad hoc forms manager, the edit and the view link bring you to the same place. Now, like other areas of ClubExpress, you can search for particular forms or whatever. This is going to search for all of the forms that do not have the archive link set for it. If I choose to include archived and search, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of forms. I'm going to leave the archive turned on for a minute just to show you that for each one, we've got a title. It shows which category it's in. This is category of ad hoc form. Shows when the form was created, when it was last updated, and what the status is. It could be active, could be archived, it could be in test mode, could be in pending mode, or it could be closed. And then it shows how many responses there are. So I'm going to turn off the archived switch here, so we just look at the active ones. And let's take a look at that fly-in photo contest form. If I click on Edit, this shows the information about the form. So this is the metadata about the form. The form's title. This description, well, this description doesn't appear any place except when an administrator is looking at this. So this was an old deadline. You'll notice it didn't say March 31st when we saw it before. But this is just so that an administrator can look at it and say, oh, this is what it's about. But this doesn't show up anywhere. The category is going to show from a list of different categories that have been defined. I'll show you the categories in a minute. Its status can be active, closed, or archived. When you're first creating these things, when they're ready to go, you'd also have a test mode status available. But that is not available once there have been some submissions made. You get to choose who can see it. Is it members only? All site users? If it's members of a particular committee, you get to pick the committee. If it's members of a selected type, you could say, oh, we only want lifetime membership, or all your different types. You could pick from that. And if it's something other than all site users, you also get this primary and solo, the same thing. Primary and solo members only, so that maybe you just want your primary member to be able to fill this out. You don't want your secondary or tertiary members to fill that out. So your family members or whatever. So we're going to say that this is member type here. We're going to say all site users, but also if you have a particular subgroup, so you only want people from your Chicago Metro people to fill out this form, and within that, what is your member type? So in this case, we're just going to say this is all site users. So those choices go away. And then what financial account does this go into? And so we're going to say that this is going to go into the Master Education Fund. If you've got QuickBooks enabled, you can say what the QuickBook item name is. If there's a fee for members, you could list the member fee here. If there's a fee for non-members, you list the fee here. So in our case, we're not charging members for anything, but we are charging $5 for the non-member fee. And if they are a non-member that's entering, what is the non-member category? And so in the non-member setup, you can set up different categories. So we're going to say, this is for ad hoc form user. And this one is saying, how does this form end? When do we close this form? And in this case, we're going to say by an end date, which means at the end of the day on July 31st, this form will no longer be available. But we could say we're just going to close it manually, in which case the date goes away. Or we'll say the maximum number of responses. So maybe you want this for the first 10 people that respond. You could say, let's allow 10 responses, and it'll close after that. But we're going to leave it as end date. And then we're going to say, well, whether or not this form allows attachments. And we're going to say yes, because we want them to allow to upload some pictures. And we also have this optional thing to say, well, who do we want to notify? Who's the contact person for this form? And so you can select the person by going to the selector and selecting your member. And then you can check whether or not you want this person to be notified every time somebody makes a submission, because maybe they need to review the submission or whatever. So I'm going to cancel these changes here. And there's two things that you need to do. One is you need to have questions. And if you've said that the form has attachments, you need to define those attachments. Let's just, before we look at those two, let's just look at the preamble. So this little icon here shows the preamble. So here's where you would add some text that goes above the questions. This is going to be the first thing that's going to be displayed on the page right under the title for the form. So here you can add whatever text you want, and you can format it any way you want. You can make things like bold, and let's make this red so that people really know there's a deadline here. And you typically would use the preamble to help explain it, maybe kind of a summary of what you put onto the main custom page. And so we save this. And now we look at the questions. You can add as many questions as you need. When you add a question, it's going to ask you for things like the question name. Well, no one ever gets to see that name other than looking at this list here. We're going to ask this as a true-false question. Have you flown in a balloon? And then you could have some notes here. Have you been up in the air before? And then you could have the word yes and no, or true and false, or sure and no way, or whatever you want the true text to be and the false text to be. Then you can also decide whether or not you want true or false, and whether or not a response is required, and whether or not you want to allow comments. Now, I'm not actually going to add this question to this form, because we've already got answers to this form. And when you try to add questions after you've got some answers, you can get things very confused, because the answers come in a particular order. The answer number one will always be question number one. And if you make a new question and change the sequence, you can really get things very confused. So try not to add questions after you've got answers. You can add a scale question. And a scale question would be something where you would say, how did you rate the food, from terrible food to fair to okay to delicious or whatever? And you've got ways of entering a scale question, and it will ask you for several items and then produce the series of scale individual questions for you. This is all consolidated in this video that I made on answer types. So in this video, this is an example of a safety survey with a scale question. So we have different questions here with different scale values. And that scale question button allows you to make these things very quickly. And so you can go through all of these, and it's going to show you for each one of these answer types, we show what the result would look like. So this is showing what a checkbox list looks like, or radio buttons, or scale. There's a bunch of things about scale. And so you can go and look at all these things, so you get an idea of what kinds of answer types are available for your questions. So again, this is an 11-minute video that could save you an awful lot of time. If you've got a question that you've made that you want to make a copy of the question, maybe you've got something for a phone number and now you want to have an emergency phone number, you can copy a question from this form or from some other form. So if we go to, say, this teacher application, I could copy own or rent from here, and it will actually be added to this form. So if you've got a form that has a question that you've already defined, you don't need to define it again. You can just copy it from this or from another form, and you can do it either from active forms only or from active and archive forms only. These are ways of making it easy for you to create questions. And of course, you can go in and edit a question later on. You can change the name. You can say photographers' names or camera person's names or whatever, and you can change the information. And you can also change the sequence of the questions by using the normal sequencer that you could just move things up or down. Again, don't change these things after you've got answers, responses. So these are ways of looking at the questions for a particular form. Now, going back here, we've got the edit, which is the data about the form. We've got the questions. We've got the preamble. And the next thing is if you've got attachments, you would click on attachments. And here, if you wanted to add another attachment, you would say number 4, a description, whether or not it's required, and it will just add it to the bottom of the list. And you can renumber them. You can go to edit this one here, and I could change this to number 1 and add it back. And that's the way you change positions here, is just by changing the number here. But again, because I've got responses, I'm going to cancel this. So that's the basic setup for an ad hoc form. Let's take a look, and we'll come back to this in a couple of minutes. Let's take a look at form categories. Here's where you can define the form categories. And if you want to add a category, you just add a category here. And we could do this, just call it education, and it gets added here. If you've got something, a category that's not been used, you can delete them. I can see some people have been playing with our test site here. So that's categories. And if you want to add a new form, you click on Add Form. You go through all that same information that we showed you while editing a form, but there's something missing. There is no status here. And the reason is we can't go into test, we can't do anything with it until we've actually added some questions. So once you fill this information out, it'll appear in the list. We can call this, we can call it webinar demo, and we just call it demo, and this could be a photo contest, and we'll make it 0 and 0. And if I save it, it shows up as webinar demo. And again, now its status is pending. And it's telling me that it can't activate because questions have not been defined. Now, on any of these things here, it's worth remembering that you can click the help icon at any time and take a look at what pending means, what test means, what active means, what closed, and what archive means. So I'm not going to go into all of them right now. That's the way this is done. So at this point, I could go and add some questions. And because this one has no responses, I can delete this one. So I'm going to click on delete, ask for a confirmation. I'm going to click on this test one here and delete and ask for confirmation. But if I had a photo contest, I want to set up a new contest. What I can do, maybe it's not a photo contest. Maybe it's a logo contest. I can click on the copy icon, and we'll call this one a logo contest. And I can go change the description and all of that. And it copies over all of the questions and the specs for the attachments, but none of the responses. So I might say this for a logo, let them submit 3 or 4 or 5 logos. And so I can save that at this point and have a new logo photo contest, and I can just go edit any of those things before making it live. And if I want to make it live, I would go in now and change its status either to test mode or to active, because it's got all the requisite things. It's got the photo the attachments defined, then it's got the preamble defined, and it got questions defined. But if I say for the logo photo contest, I don't need the number of fly-ins or something like that, I could remove whatever questions I want for this copy. Let's take a look at the responses, because that's really the big thing here. And so for anything that's got responses, you click over here on the responses icon. So we'll see that John Duckall here today made a response. Payment is pending. So it's not been submitted yet. It shows whether or not people are a member, and it shows whether or not it's been reviewed. What reviewed means is that if I come over here and I look at this one, I can add a review comment and say, this is Lisa's father, a good guy. If I say that and I go back a page, and I probably have to refresh, it says that it has been reviewed and still payment is pending. If I go back here and look at it, I can look at the photo. So we have one attachment. I can look at the attachment and it shows the actual photo. So we can look at each one of these, and now it's very possible that somebody makes a mistake and they submit something and they really don't want to submit it. In that case, you can click on this here that says withdraw. So this will withdraw it from the submission. If they've paid for it, it doesn't credit them back any money. You'd have to go and issue them a credit or some way of dealing with their transaction, but it doesn't automatically put any money back into their account. But it does do every time you withdraw, or if something is withdrawn, like this one here, you can click on this to reactivate it. They get an email message saying that the status has been changed. For this one here, this one said that this was required, but these two were optional. So this one actually had 3 photos that were submitted. So when you go back to the responses for this particular form, you can export the responses and the details to a spreadsheet. So that's very useful for you to be able to look at the form. In fact, if I do this and I go look at this file, it shows all of that information of the ones that were actually submitted. So it doesn't show the ones that were not actually submitted, the ones that are payment pending or withdrawn. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe it shows just the 4 that were actually submitted. And if I were to go to John Duckall's account and I wanted to say we received the check, I, as the administrator, could go to that non-member's account, look at the charges and say, listen, we received the check. And then it would change automatically from payment pending to submitted. But if we go back to the Ad Hoc Forms Manager, there are reports that are particularly useful. Most of the reports, in this case, would be about the responses, like this response list. And if I look at this report, it'll show all of the responses, including the ones that are not submitted. So that's a useful report. But another report that's particularly useful that I rather like is this Ad Hoc Forms info report. And what that does is it gives you a report about the names of the fields, whether or not they're required, whether they're attachments or not. There's a similar report in surveys that it goes into much more detail. That'll tell you for each one of the questions what the answer type is and what the configuration of the answer type is. So these are all the options that are available to you for Ad Hoc Forms. The Ad Hoc Forms Manager shows each one of the forms, archived or not, And you can go in and say, okay, this form is done. I can change its close method to end date. I could just go change it and close it manually. This pilot application, for example, I could just take it and just say it's manual and its status is closed. Oh, by the way, when you're in test mode, you can test all this stuff. And when you make it active, all of your test responses get deleted and then they get replaced by actives. So I've been talking an awful lot. So the question is, are there questions?
There were 2 questions in the chat. First one was, can you require a maximum of 3 photos? And that was covered under attachments. When you go into the attachments, you can require how many attachments are there.
That's right. So if I have this new logo contest and I go to the attachments, I can go to any one of these and say, whoop, required, yes. And if I go to this one here and I go required, yes. So now they're all required.
And then the other question was, or what was the verbiage there that for a non-member looking to basically have, if they previously entered their information, what did the verbiage say, which said, have you previously entered your information on our website, click here to search.
Yeah, so if I, say if I open up another browser here and I go to Demo Club here, because this one won't be logged in. If I go to Photo Contest here and I click on this to get to the form, it says, have you previously entered your information on our website? Click here to search. And when they search, they have to provide 2 things. They have to provide an email address and they have to provide a first name, because you might have 2 people at the same email address, John and Mary. So which one are you? And if there is more than one, it can bring up the right one. Are there any other questions?
Alan, thank you for hosting this. We operate a sailing program and we need to collect medical information, medical history information from the kids in the program. Would the ad hoc forms be a good way to do this? And is there a way to put the form into the purchase queue? Right at the moment people order, they go through the release from liability, which we've edited. But I'd like to get the medical history form into that queue prior to purchase, if that's even possible.
Well, one of the ways you could do that is by doing what's called the joining agreement. In the control panel, if we go to the People tab, I think.
Club tab.
No, it's Club tab. That's the one that's not in the People tab. There's a thing called the Member Joining Agreement. And the Member Joining Agreement is optional, and meaning that the club doesn't have to have it. And what you could do is you could put a whole bunch of stuff here, and then you could put a link here to your form. So if I say this is going to be an ad hoc form and it's going to be to the teacher application. So let's assume it's to your medical history form. And I want to make it a button, for example. You can just bop that in here. So that way they have to go through this thing, and at least they'll know that here's a link to it and I need to do that. Now, and what happens at the bottom of the joining agreement, there's a little I agree button, I agree checkbox that automatically gets put down to the bottom. And the advantage of doing this is that if you come to the People tab and you go to the Membership Setup Wizard, you can decide whether or not you want this joining agreement to be presented when a new member signs up or when a member renews. And so that's a way of at least putting it in their face, saying, you need to look at this agreement, and yes, I want you to fill out this form. And I'd probably have it open in a new window, but you would say in the form, now you have to go back and finish filling out your membership application. So it's a separate thing. It can't necessarily be put directly into the flow, probably unless there's some custom work that is done for your particular organization. Does that pretty much sum it up, Victor?
That sums it up nicely.
Okay, that particular approach probably would not work for us, so I guess we better just plan on emailing these forms out to people and asking them to send them back.
You could email them a link to what I would do is I'd make a custom page and then have them fill it out. And that way it gets submitted to you. And you can just send them a link to the custom page.
So how would that work? So that the custom page effectively becomes a form, or?
Yeah, the custom page would be like the photo contest page. It's
Right.
just a custom web page.
I
And
got
on there, you would have a link to the actual form.
Mhm.
Now, you could, in fact, if you made a page like this and you just went and we go to the form here, this is the URL of the form. I mean, you could actually pick up the URL of the form
Right.
and take them directly to the form. But again, if they're not a member yet, if they haven't logged in, it's going to ask them for that login information and all of that. So, but the key to ad hoc forms is that, much like a survey, you can ask them questions. Here you can also say, I'm going to let you or insist that you have file attachments, and I can also optionally collect a fee from members or non-members, and that's something you can't do on a survey.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions?
Could you go back to the reports?
Sure. So let me see, I'm logged in. So if I go to control panel and I go to ad hoc forms, and so remember, these are reports for individual forms. I showed you the first two. I can show you the formatted responses.
That's the one I have a question about.
Well, let's take a look. So this is showing for each one of the members the information. And I don't think it's just formatted one per page.
There was something, because I extracted these into a spreadsheet.
Yes.
Well, I think there's a bug which I'm going to have to double check and submit it. I don't think the comments came through, but there was something else that let me see the contents, the comments.
Yeah, were the comments shown in the spreadsheet? Let's take a quick look at that. We'll go to downloads. Yeah, I think here. Yeah, this one here. The comments show in the spreadsheet. So in this case, Martin had said, Lisa stopped by the volunteer desk and showed me some of her photos. So that's where it shows up. Should that appear in the report? Probably, yeah. There may be some reasons not to have it in the report. Maybe this report's going to be handed out to a bunch of people, but only the people that were reviewing should see those comments. There may be. I can argue both ways as to whether or not those comments should be seen in addition to the actual submission.
Okay.
But at least you know that you can get them by exporting the data. All right. Any other questions? Well, in that case, thank you all for attending. I hope you find these useful. I will edit this and neaten it up a little bit and get it posted in the webinar recordings. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.